The hunter-gatherers of the Old Stone Age. One of the defining features of being human is our ability to make tools. We are essentially the species that looked at a rock and thought, you know what, I can work with this. Because of that innovation, historians call the earliest part of human history the Paleolithic Age, which is Greek for Old Stone Age. And they mean that very literally. If it was sharp and made of stone, congratulations, you were holding cutting-edge technology. And the fact that this period stretches from about 2.5 million years ago to around 10,000 BCE, that means humans spent a very long time perfecting the art of hitting things with rocks. For most of that time, people survived as hunter-gatherers, which meant every meal required effort. There were no grocery stores, no farms, and definitely no Uber Eats. If you wanted dinner, you had two options: find a plant or chase an animal and hope it didn't decide to chase you back. Over generations, Paleolithic people developed a deep knowledge of their environment. They learned which animals were good to hunt and which plants wouldn't make them have conversations with talking caterpillars, give them the poops, or ruin their day in some other way. They gathered nuts, berries, fruits, wild grains, and edible plants, and hunted animals like bison, horses, wild goats, reindeer, and other large game. If you lived near the coast, you also had fish, which was basically the closest thing the Old Stone Age had to convenient fast food. In other words, survival in the Paleolithic world required skill, patience, and a solid understanding of nature. Because if you guessed wrong about which plant to eat, well, you probably didn't live long enough to pass that mistake on. Hunting animals and gathering wild plants naturally shaped how Paleolithic people lived. Archaeologists believe Paleolithic humans traveled in small bands of about 20 or 30 people. They were nomadic, meaning they moved from place to place, mostly because food doesn't stay in one spot forever, and farming hadn't been invented yet. When the animals migrated or the plants stopped growing, it was time to move on. You see, hunting required careful observation of animal behavior and real cooperation, because chasing large animals with sticks is not exactly wise. Over time, tools improved. The invention of the spear, and later the bow and arrow, made hunting far more efficient. Harpoons and bone fish hooks also help people catch fish, which was a nice alternative to trying to grab those slimy, slippery suckers with your bare hands. Finding food was what the Paleolithic life was all about, and both men and women were responsible for it. Women, who were usually caring for children, tended to stay closer to camp and gathered berries, nuts, and wild grains, which, inconveniently for some modern stereotypes, actually provided a large portion of the group's food. Men generally hunted wild animals, which often meant traveling far from camp and hoping the animal didn't decide to hunt back. Because both men and women were essential to survival, many believed there was some kind of equality between them. Some even argue that decisions about the band's activities were likely made by both men and women, which suggests Paleolithic societies may have figured out the value of shared decision-making long before many later civilizations did. For shelter, some groups, especially in colder climates, used caves, which were basically Ice Age-free housing. But people didn't rely on caves alone. They also built simple shelters using wood poles or sticks covered with animal hides. And where wood was scarce, they got creative and used mammoth bones to build frames, which they then covered with hides. Yes, houses made from giant prehistoric elephant bones. Around 500,000 years ago, humans also figured out how to use fire regularly. That meant light, heat, and much more comfortable life inside caves or shelters. Fire also made cooking possible, which improved the taste of food, helped it last longer, and made tough plants like wild grains easier to chew and digest. Basically, humans discovered that most food is better when it's not raw. Paleolithic people weren't just surviving, they were also creating art. The famous cave paintings of large animals in southwestern France and northern Spain show that early humans had a cultural side too. In 1994, archaeologists discovered the Chauvet Cave in southern France. Inside were more than 300 paintings of lions, oxen, owls, bears, and other animals. Interestingly, many of these weren't animals people typically hunted, which has led some scholars to believe the paintings had religious or symbolic meaning, or perhaps people just liked decorating their caves.